Hello everyone, welcome. I am pleased to welcome everyone and to serve as the MC for today's celebration honoring King County Prosecuting Attorney Dan Satterberg. And we're here to honor his more than 3 decades of public service and leadership. So here's the order of today's events. We have a few surprises, and I promise they are pleasant surprises. We're going to have a few speakers, we're going to share a few more surprises, and then finally we're going to allow Dan to have the mic to say a few words. And before we launch into today's festivities, I was told that I could take 3 minutes to say a few words about Dan. 3 minutes to capture and pay respect to more than 3 decades of leadership and accomplishments. Not even the most talented writer or the most skilled poet could give Dan's career the credit that it deserves in that short amount of time. So instead, I'm going to focus on just one trait that I admire about Dan. Lately, I have been reflecting on former prosecuting attorney Norm Mailing. Some of you may remember that he had principles of the day for each day of the week. And one of those oft repeated principles was breathe in love, exhale hate. At first blush, this seems like a very easy to follow principle. In truth, it can be the hardest thing for a leader to do. And I don't know anyone who lives these words better than Dan Satterberg. In the 22 years that I have worked directly with Dan, he has made thousands of decisions, big and small, that have impacted the lives of many in our office and in our King County communities. Some of those decisions have been well received, and some have captured the attention of almost no one. Others have been unpopular, and some have been openly criticized. And Dan has received more than his fair share of criticism, some shared respectfully, and some shared with open anger and hostility. Such is the job of leaders. Feedback, second guessing, praise, and criticism come with the job. What has always been remarkable about Dan is how even-keeled and gracious he has been in the face of disagreement, criticism, or outright attack. In the 22 years that I have worked with Dan, I have never once seen him act from a place of anger or in an angry manner. I have never heard Dan raise his voice in anger, and I've never seen him take out his frustration on others. It takes great strength to breathe in love and exhale hate, because hate is powerful. Hate has the power to suck us in. It can cause us to lash out and to forget the feelings of others. Hate can blind us to another's humanity. And to paraphrase the wisdom of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., hate does not cure hate. Only love can do that. Every time Dan was met with challenge or disagreement, unkindness, or open criticism, I witnessed him resist the urge to match that type of energy and instead lean into the criticism, explore another perspective with curiosity, or sometimes simply ignore the unkindness and let spiteful words pass. It takes strength to breathe in love and exhale hate. It takes humility and recognition, not just of one's humility and humanity, but also of the humanity of others. This ability to breathe in love and exhale hate, to be the bigger person, to be the person who resists the urge to strike out and strike back, that is one of Dan's superhero strengths. And it has kept the office out of hot water. It has kept us from unnecessary pettiness. And it has allowed every amazing employee of the PAO to focus on the important work that we've all been called to do. Dan's ability to breathe in love and exhale hate stems from his innate sense of humility and his disciplined practice of restraint. And I have learned so much from watching Dan live by Norm Mailing's wise words, and I am grateful for this one of many traits that marks Dan as one of our great and compassionate leaders of all time. Thank you, Dan, for your years of leadership, and for sharing and modeling love. I believe Norm would be proud of you. I am proud of you, and I believe everyone in this room is proud of you. Thank you. Okay. So, we have just a little surprise one to share with you, and I'm going to let our audio-visual folks launch it.
Well, I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. My father was an attorney, and my mother was a nurse and then later a nursing instructor. And I heard my dad talk every night about some client that he helped. And so it was a pretty short trip from the University of Washington to the University of Washington Law School. You know, as a young lawyer, I thought that doing justice meant enforcing the law. And I look back now at some of the cases that I tried early on. I thought, why did I try that? I tried people for possessing cocaine, small amounts, right? We don't even file those cases now. I've learned a lot over the years and about the power of the prosecutor and about the need to approach our job with some humility. I can decide through the use of prosecutorial discretion where to put our resources and where not to. And I can ask the questions that need to be asked. Are we doing anybody any good, or are we just doing more harm to people who are already marginalized? To me, the racial justice motivation is very strong because I realize, like a lot of privileged white people, I'm just coming to it late in my life to say, wow, all this stuff that we accepted as okay wasn't okay, and all these things that we weren't taught in school, I'm a little bit angry about. Now it's out there, and it's up to each of us to do our own education, and then to come back and ask the questions. If you're a prosecutor, well, what is it in our office that perpetuates racial injustice? And it's not something that you do without some pushback on it, but I'm really proud of the way that my office has embraced equity and social justice. Justice to me is a larger concept that involves restoring harm that was done, but also forgiveness and coming up with a path for that individual who caused the harm to pay it back, or to pay it back by improving themselves.
And just a quick thank you to Fair and Just Prosecution for paying homage to Dan's career. You know, I have been offered the opportunity to say a few words, and we have some others who also want to say a few words. So I'm going to call each of our division chiefs. We'll start with Dan Clark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Clark, and I'm the chief of the criminal division. I was walking through the office last Friday, and I ran into the Victim Assistance Unit staff supervisor, Cammie Hendricks. I said, I'm going to give a speech next week for Dan. What do you want people to know about him? And Cammie started to tear up. She said she had been going through old photos of Dan in the office for the slideshow that you've seen earlier, and it hit her. She said, I want you to tell folks how much fun Dan brought to our office. And I was thinking about that. She's right. You know, never afraid to wear a silly costume, never afraid of a bad pun, never afraid to put on his blazer and step into a dunk tank or make arts and crafts turkeys with staff. Dan spreads joy. In many ways, Dan is the anti-politician. He's not slick. Sorry, Dan, but you've seen the high school picture. And he's not about himself. He's had no higher aspirations than running this office, because deep down, you know, he loves this place and the people here with all of his heart. And he would do anything for any of us. Dan knows that we have incredibly tough jobs. We work long hours, we deal with life and death matters, and it can be physically and emotionally exhausting. Dan will be known for many of the things discussed today, and for good reason. For shifting our office in really important ways, applying an equity lens, sharing power, establishing a vision for a modern, progressive prosecutor's office. All of those have been truly revolutionary. But let us also not forget, with all the internal and external pressures around us all today, that Dan also taught us to find joy in what we do and who we are with. And that's an important legacy too. Dan, we admire you, we thank you, and we love you.
I am now going to invite Kathleen O'Brien.
Thank you. You're already way up.
Nope. I have my tissues just in case. Okay, Dan? Okay. Preparing my remarks for today's festivities was bittersweet. My name is Kathleen O'Brien, and for the last 15 years, I have served as Dan's chief of the Family Support Division. And like so many of you here today, I too watched and learned from the best. To say that Dan is a visionary leader is an understatement. He is a prosecutor with a steadfast and unwavering commitment to changing the status quo of criminal prosecution in King County and beyond. Years before Dan's colleagues around the country were willing to recognize and address the grave shortcomings and systemic injustices inherent in our criminal justice system, Dan was speaking out. At times, he was the lone voice speaking out, but he continued speaking, whether it made people feel uncomfortable or not. Because of Dan and other brave souls like him, today at the PAO, we are all a lot more comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Chapter 12 of this book, Change from Within, lays out Dan's professional why. It captures his life's work, along with his changing viewpoints on many important topics, some of which have impacted him personally. When you finish reading this chapter, you will understand why it is that Dan was no longer willing to accept the status quo of a broken criminal justice system. Channeling his values of respect, accountability, compassion, dignity, fairness, and humanity into every division and section of this office, Dan changed the marrow of the PAO. For the last many years, equity and social justice has been the lens of our casework and the guiding principle of our office culture at the PAO. Dan recognized years before the rest of us did that if he didn't lead the change in this area, no one else was going to do so. Thank you, Dan, for showing us how to be vulnerable and strong at the same time. Watching you change your mind, positions, and priorities, and your viewpoints demonstrated for the rest of us that we are never done learning or growing, and that we all have more to learn, and that one size never fits all. In closing, if the work and the people of this office matter to you like they matter to our boss, as we enter into this new chapter of PAO leadership, I encourage all of us here today to honor Dan's legacy and values by choosing to give one another the benefit of the doubt or even a second chance. None of us are perfect. Let's model courage, embrace understanding, and respect one another's differences. Let's do what Dan would do. Together we are better, and only by working together and supporting each other can we effectively accomplish the important work of this great office. Thank you, Dan Satterberg, for showing us all how to be better humans. We're going to really miss you.
For those who don't know me, my name is Jimmy Hung, and I have the honor and privilege of supporting our people in the juvenile division. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. And over the next month or so, Dan, we're going to have lots of stories about all the great things that you've accomplished in your distinguished and decorated career, but for me, I wanted to share with the people a little bit about the little things that make you who you are. I remember when you were just newly appointed to replace Norm, and we were in Chelan, and one of the first times I had a chance to interact with you was because you wanted to play golf with some of your deputies. And I remember playing golf with you at the Chelan Municipal Golf Course, and for all of a sudden you dropped to the ground and started doing push-ups. And I remember saying to myself, this isn't Norm, that's for sure. I also remember you being the fastest walking tour guide in Manhattan when you took me to go see the strawberry fields and then also walked me by the Dakota apartment complex where John Lennon was assassinated. And then most recently, I remember you and I having an opportunity to hang out at a shockingly nice whiskey bar in Salt Lake City, of all places, talking about religion and the cosmos. And probably more times than I wish to remember are those one-on-one conversations that you and I had where, as my boss, you had every reason to drop the hammer on me. But instead, you extended grace and a supportive ear. Although I'm one of your chiefs, I know that there's nothing special or unique about the way that you treat me. That's how you treated all of us. You were always quick to forgive because you believed in the best of those who have dedicated their careers to this office and to their community. At your core, you are a person with a big heart like Norm. And you're a big dreamer like John Lennon. You weren't content to rest on your privilege that you were born with. You reached out to people and communities who have been historically neglected by our justice system. At personal and professional cost, you gave them voice, a seat at the table, and shared your power. Although you're leaving at a time of uncertainty and for some people, some level of discomfort, you also taught me that that's okay. Progress requires change. Any meaningful change requires folks to get a little uncomfortable. And just like on that 10th tee box when you're doing those push-ups, I'm sure your arms were a little sore and your chest was a little sore and you were a little uncomfortable. You were stronger because of that. And we're gonna be stronger because of this. You are the original progressive prosecutor, Dan. And I think the most convincing evidence of the progress and the change that you have led is that you're passing the torch on to the first woman and the first person of color to ever be our county prosecutor. Congratulations to you, Lisa. Congratulations to you, Dan. Mission accomplished. It's my privilege to have worked with you, and I wish you the very best in the open waters of retirement and time with your family.
My name's David Eldred, and I'm a lawyer in the Civil Division, here to represent my colleagues there and our chief, Susie Slonaker. And I'm here to congratulate you, Dan, and thank you for your leadership. Folks often forget that in addition to being our criminal prosecutor, Dan is the county's lawyer. And there are 100 or so of us folks who are dedicated to serving the county in that way. And Dan has always been engaged as a lawyer. And when we would come to see him with our lengthy legal memos, sometimes I think he was the only one who read them, he would welcome us by referring to us as his high-priced lawyers. Still waiting for that check. But he also would ask to see the cases and engage with us on the legal issues and share in the strategy, and really was and is the county's lawyer, and we appreciated that. But more importantly, I want to recognize your leadership on our values and the way that you have brought us together as an office around values. Not just for the impact that it's had on the community and as a result of criminal justice, but the impact that it's had on the county as a whole. Because although it took us a while in the Civil Division to figure out what it means to do justice in our work, we often thought of ourselves as sort of the gatekeepers or in a role where we help the county decide whether they're following the rules or not. But really, we understand now that our role is to help the county fulfill its mission and to serve the community. And we do that in a way that we wouldn't have without your leadership and without the change of culture that you brought to the office. I also think it shows up in the way that we all work together across the divisions, and the fact that you can have a full career in the office now and change from one division to another. Usually we're the beneficiaries of that, but it goes both directions, and the way that we share in serving the public, sharing ideas, not just the values, but the day-to-day legal advice. So thank you, Dan, for your legacy of justice that you leave here in the office and on each of us who work here and on the community.
So we have another surprise. You know, there are some of us who have had the privilege of saying a few words, but there are also some folks who want to proclaim a few words. So we have someone here to proclaim a few words. And if I could invite folks from Councilmember Balducci's office up. Oh, there's Councilmember Balducci. Didn't recognize you with the mask.
No, I wouldn't send somebody else to do this. This is too fun. I just want to say a few words before reading the proclamation. I've known Dan for a very long time. When I started King County about 23 years ago, one of my first jobs was to represent the prosecuting attorney's office in labor negotiations. So I'm one of the people who Dan was my client. And a lot of what you say about Dan as a boss really resonates with me. As a client, he was much the same. He was smart, he was focused. He expected a high quality of work, but he was really fun to work for. And he was marginally more flexible than some of the clients in labor relations. So thank you for that. So over the decades, I've gotten a really certain unique and changing view of Jan's career, starting from the nosebleed bleachers seats in OLR, then kind of a side view from the wings in DHAD, where I got to benefit from a lot of the civil division's work. And finally from the luxury box seats up on the 12th floor, where Dan, I want you to know, would visit at least once a year, every year, to lobby very, very strongly for more resources for your organization. So he was your champion. Yes, that's worth applause. But I just want to say that personally, Dan's career stands for the proposition that you don't have to be a hardcore partisan to drive change. You can just have really, really strong values and choose to act on them. You can do it from inside the system. You can care about public safety and accountability and equity and second chances all at the same time. And that real change that Dan has absolutely pushed this county towards takes vision, persistence, competence, and partnerships, but it mainly just takes a lot of heart. And Dan brought all of those things to us. So I am delighted to be here on behalf of the King County Council to read this here proclamation. I'm going to need these. Whereas Daniel T. Satterberg has served in the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office for 37 years, including 17 years as Chief of Staff to Norm Mailing and 15 years as the elected prosecuting attorney. And whereas Dan was a trial deputy in the Special Assault and Drug Units and the first gang prosecutor. And whereas Dan has spearheaded the transformation of our criminal justice system at the local, statewide, and even national level by bringing racial equity to the forefront, inviting community partners into this critical body of work, developing innovative public health responses, and shining a spotlight on the need to invest in reentry services. And whereas Dan's successful launch of programs to keep youth in school and out of the courts has measurably advanced juvenile justice reform and contributed to the number of King County youth in secure detention decreasing from a high of 205 in 2005 to an historic low of 22 in 2021. And whereas Dan was a founder of the nationally recognized LEAD program, which has improved public health responses for people engaged in low-level crimes who struggle with behavioral health challenges in King County and across the country. And whereas Dan fundamentally reshaped and strengthened support for victims in King County through increasing the KCPAO's commitment to intentional victim advocacy and services. And whereas Dan was instrumental in cultivating the relationships necessary to effectively respond to gaps in criminal justice practice, advancing initiatives such as the Buyer Beware Sexual Exploitation Program, the KCPAO's Sentence Review Unit and Clemency Practice, Family Intervention and Restorative Services Program, and many more. And whereas Dan is not only a respected leader in public safety and criminal justice reform, whose legacy will be felt for generations to come, but is also a leader in rock music, who will continue rocking on in retirement. Now, therefore, we, the Metropolitan King County Council, proclaim December 6th, 2022, as Daniel T. Satterberg Day in King County, and thank Dan for his dedicated service to the people of King County, and it's signed by all members of the King County Council. So, congratulations to you, Dan.
Dan, I thought you were coming up here to say a few words, but not yet. We have a couple more surprises to share with you. Roll the tape.
Hi, Dan. Hey, congratulations on your retirement. You've had a really impactful career. Your commitment and positive impact in the field and practice of criminal justice is going to be felt for decades. I've appreciated your collaboration through the years, tackling our clemency work, our death penalty moratorium, our firearms regulation, a whole host of other policies that have made our communities safer and bent the moral arc of the universe towards justice. So thanks for your many years. Good luck.
My memories of Dan Satterberg revolve around 2 points in time when things were really difficult. 1989, I was Norm's first chief of staff, I might say the only chief of staff not to become King County prosecutor, and I was appointed by Governor Booth Gardner to the King County Superior Court. And who would replace me as Norm's chief of staff was a big issue. And Norm, of course, put me in charge of the interviews. We interviewed some very talented people, but I knew that Norm needed not just talent, but he needed compassion, empathy, and someone he could rely on 100%. And that was Dan Satterberg. And it was one of the great decisions that I made to recommend Dan Satterberg to Norm Mailing. And then 2006, when Norm suddenly passed away, and the issue was who should be the next King County prosecutor, there was, to me, no doubt that that person should be Dan Satterberg. And I'm so pleased that the county council and the county executive and everyone agreed that he was the right choice. And he has continued the mailing legacy and furthered it in ways that really speak so well to the kind of person, the kind of prosecutor Dan Satterberg is and was and always will be. And I'm so proud that Dan is my friend.
Congratulations, Dan. 37 years serving at the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office and 15 years as our elect. I'm grateful that no matter how many times we disagreed, we still continue to find a way to build together. And in the world that we're living in today, I can't imagine anything that's more necessary than to have people who are coming from two different perspectives, willing to join together in the middle, find common ground, and create better outcomes for the young people and young adults in our community. There's many things that we've dreamt out loud about that we've yet to see come to fruition, and many things that we still disagree on today. That being said, I am excited for the hands that the office has been left in, for the vision and the seeds that you planted, and the opportunity to continue to journey towards a more just King County with Lisa Mannion. Thank you for your service, thank you for your commitment to partnership, and thank you for always elevating causes like ours at Choose 180.
Hey Dan, congratulations on your well-deserved retirement. Look, somehow you've got like, I think 3 different retirement parties, and it looks like I can't make any of them with the schedule. So sorry to have to do this video instead, but really I just want to say thanks for your service. Obviously we've known each other a long time, and I guess if I just had one thing I would say is that you came into the job obviously as prosecutor, you know, under tough circumstances, and you had really, really big shoes to fill following Norm Mailing. And honestly, I just don't know of anybody who could have done as good a job under those circumstances as you've done. And you've just done it with class, and you've been gracious and just a real leader, not just for King County, but I've seen that in meetings with other prosecutors around the state as you've led that organization as well. So I just really appreciate, you know, all you've done for the county, but also for the people of the state of Washington, and doing it with such humility and grace and with such skill as well. So congratulations. I hope to break away to make it to one of your going away parties. If not, I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much.
Hey, Dan, congratulations on your retirement. One of my favorite memories of you is our weekly strategy sessions during the recession with our 2 favorite presiding judges. We tried to navigate the budget crisis after the recession. I remember you giving me a bad time and teasing me that because I had a badge and uniform, I could always get the public's attention at these budget hearings. I always thought you were kind of secretly jealous because, you know, it's pretty cool to wear a uniform. Not rock band cool, but still cool. Dan, what I admire about you is your heart and your integrity. You're one of the few people I know who took tragedy, and instead of becoming bitter about it, you used it as a motivation to learn and advocate for criminal justice reform. You were willing to take positions that weren't always popular with your peers, but you stood up for what was right. And our community owes you a great debt of gratitude for that. And you deserve a very happy, fun retirement. Congratulations.
Hi, Dan. Mark and I are here to congratulate you on your years of service, working with Norm and serving as King County prosecutor. Thank you for stepping up when you did after Norm's sudden death and making that transition and continuing with his goals of serving justice. So we're excited for your retirement. We wish you wonderful, lazy days of boating and other activities that you enjoy. Congratulations, and thank you for all your years of service.
Hi, Dan. Congratulations on your 3 decades of service to King County. Could not be more proud of all that you accomplished at your time at the prosecutor's office. As my dad once said, the mission of the office is not just to win cases, but to serve justice. And you certainly did that in your career. Want to wish you a wonderful retirement, and thank you again for all your wonderful service to King County.
Dan, good afternoon. It's my privilege to be a part of this virtual tribute to you for a life well lived and a career well spent. My respect for you is wide and deep, but it primarily revolves around your willingness to do new things, try new things, to innovate based upon new evidence or no evidence, but necessarily about what we need to do, but we know that there's something wrong, so let's try some things. And that's wonderful. And you've been a great partner in systems change, particularly in the juvenile area. And secondly, with respect to your impact, well, it is profound, starting in our days together with the MacArthur Foundation's Models for Change efforts, which were terrific and really made a difference in the lives of so many kids, and especially in starting to reduce those numbers of disparity in the juvenile justice systems. Your willingness to adapt restorative justice practices and expand the opportunities for diversion from the juvenile justice system. Rehabilitation to 25, extending the opportunity for young people whose brains we know don't develop until they're 25, 26 years old, to, if they have to be in detention, incarcerated, that they will receive the kinds of services that are due to those developmental needs up to the time that they are 25. You helped with this brand new building. which I know it's controversial, but it's a whole lot better than what it has replaced. So, your legacy is one of really bringing a lot of alternatives, a lot of empathy, a lot of understanding to young people, teenagers, young people who get involved in the juvenile justice system or who are at risk for entering that system. You're setting them on the right course, and that will be your legacy. But I personally look forward to continuing to work with you on the Multicare Behavioral Health Foundation Board because the work continues, and you are a wise soul whose experience and whose heart belongs with this work. Thank you so much.
Prosecutor Satterberg, congrats. What an amazing job. What an amazing career improving justice, quality of life, and taking care of the good citizens of King County, Washington. They asked 2 questions of me. One was, what do I respect? And you, sir, I respect everything. Thank you on behalf of APA, our board members, our staff members, for your leadership, your thought, your guidance, and everything you've done to improve the role of the prosecutor throughout our great nation. The second question presented was, give us a memory, and I think that's an easy one. I remember way back when we were in the U.S. Capitol and you were going to visit one of the members of the House of Representatives from your county, and you asked me as though I should know the office number. I took you to the chart, all 435 were up there, and you're saying, how do folks ever have the opportunity to distinguish themselves? Well, you, sir, are not only one of 435, you are one of about 2,000, and you clearly distinguished yourself, and you are going to be sorely missed by your peers. So thank you, sir. It's been an honor to have worked with you this past fall.
You know, as is our custom when someone leaves our office, one of our well-regarded colleagues, we typically do a plaque, and on the plaque we print a quote. So I have Dan's plaque here, and it says, Daniel T. Satterberg, prosecuting attorney, 1985 to 2022, in appreciation for your service to the residents of King County and your unwavering pursuit of justice. The legitimacy of our governmental power depends on the fair exercise of it. It also requires that the people that we serve have a voice in how we wield that power. Daniel T. Satterberg. And Dan, this is a little bit... This is a little unconventional. If we were in a fancy pants law firm, we'd probably give you some kind of really fancy, expensive present. But instead, what we are doing is we are renaming the Solutions Room to the Satterberg Solutions Room. Because we all know that Satterberg solutions are the best. And before you come up to speak, we have one last final surprise. Michael, if you could come, please.
There are so many papers down behind this podium that I have to search for the governor's personal letter to Daniel T. Satterberg. So let's get to the paper chase. This is the governor's letter to Daniel Satterberg, and I shall read it for you. Dear Dan, congratulations on your retirement following such an impactful career. He punctuates that first sentence with an exclamation point. I think that means it's an acclamation. After 37 years serving King County in the prosecuting attorney's office, including 17 years as chief of staff and 15 years as the elected leader of the office, your service to the residents of King County is truly immeasurable. Your commitment and positive impact in the field and practice of criminal justice will be felt for decades to come. During your tenure, I have seen firsthand how you have spearheaded the transformation of our criminal justice system both here at home and across the country. In doing so, you have inspired a generation of prosecutors who will carry the torch in Washington State and around the nation. Thanks to your efforts, King County is now a national leader in criminal justice reform, youth diversion programs, sentence review and clemency, reentry services, and victim support services. Under your leadership, King County created the nationally recognized LEAD program, which is improving public health responses for people engaged in low-level crimes who struggle with behavioral health challenges both here in King County and across the country. With this track record of transformative excellence, King County is poised to continue progress in connecting people with public health supports best positioned to help them. I am also particularly grateful for your leadership at the state level through the Washington State Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, Washington State Reentry Council, Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, as well as your testimony before our state legislature for stronger victim-centered approaches to combat crime. Because of your advocacy, Washington State has taken steps towards rewriting laws in the interests of justice, and you should be proud of your legacy in this area. Thank you for your many years of distinguished service, and congratulations on a well-earned retirement. King County and Washington State are lucky to have such a thoughtful, trailblazing, and committed leader of your caliber. It is signed, very truly yours, Jay Inslee, Governor. And before I present this letter, you know, you really can't take me anywhere. Everybody knows me about that. And I would always take the road untraveled and say the things that no one else would say about Dan. So let me start by saying, we've heard a lot of words like progressive, modern, restorative. We're not talking about fashion. We're not talking about trends. But what we are talking about is Dan has also served as a protector. Dan has protected this office from the moment he stepped in when Norm died. Dan has protected this office in the face of large-scale firestorms of public record in the public forums, in newspapers where this office has been attacked. Dan has stood at every stand, in every situation where this office has been challenged, and he has braved them on our behalf. He has been at the front of those storms, and we have all been protected and benefited, and we have been able to progress our practice because of it, our service to the community because of it. That is the man I believe in. That's who he is. That's who I know the woman that Lisa is. And I am so esteemingly honored and privileged to continue to serve in this office. I present you with the governor's letter, Dan. My dear friend. Boom. It's got to get out. It's got to go. It's got to go.
Well, thank you so much. I'm not used to, being asked to wait this long to speak, but I want to first thank everyone on the party committee. You guys really know how to throw a party, and I'm touched and I'm honored by your presence. This whole thing has been fantastic, and it's a good warm-up because we have 2 more of these, but nothing like this. Nothing in a historic. This building, this room is so historic. So many things have happened here. I've been here for swearing-ins and for drug court graduations, for sentencings, for adoptions, for the new bar members who come in every year. There's so many great things happen here, and we are lucky to have such a historic place in this building. And I'm honored by your presence today, all of you. And, you know, I'm not a special person, but I've had a special job, and I've had a special career in a remarkable place for a very long time. And I know it's weird to have the same job for 37 years, or at least some people think it is. But to me, it just meant that I found home. I found home right away. And if you work at the prosecuting attorney's office, you know what I mean. It is a tremendous place with tremendous potential still. So this week, as I've been reflecting on my 37 years and on my way out, I do get asked questions, and the 3 top questions I get asked are, what, if anything, will you miss about this job? Number 2, what would you say is your legacy after 37 years and 15 years as the elected prosecutor? And finally, what are you going to do now? So let me take those one at a time. First, what will I miss? Well, obviously, and it sounds trite, but I will miss the people. I mean, the people who have been in this office have been there for me my whole life. I started when I was 24 as a Rule 9 intern at juvenile court, and I was hired full-time. I thought I was among some of the most amazing people as 25, wandering the halls here. And then at age 30, I became Norm's chief of staff. And Norm Mailing took a real chance on me. I mean, he was the dairy farmer from Acme. I was the bass player from Burien. We didn't have a lot in common, but I loved the man, and I knew that that he could be somebody who could be a tremendous mentor for me, and I called it the Norm Mailing experience. We all everyone had their own experience with Norm, and this was just a year after his daughter Karen died in a tragic sledding accident. So I learned, I was quickly adopted by Mark Mailing, who's here, thank you Mark, and Judy, and Norm, and became part of that family, and I learned so much about love and grief and compassion from them. And to the extent that I grew up at all, still debatable, I did it here, and they were my family. When I got to the front office, Becky Gifford was already here. Hi, Becky. See, some people keep jobs for 37 years plus. Heidi Parkington was also there, and very quickly was joined by Susie Harris and Mary Colasuto, who were Norm's executive assistants and have served me so well. And for a long time, our public information officer, some of you remember Dan Donahoe, he and I worked together every day. Mon Wynn came to help organize some of our bill paying. I always said the most important things we did in the front office was to pay the people. And then later it was to pay the people and make sure their computers run, those 2 things. And if we did those 2 things, they really wouldn't care what else we did down there. Mary Yu was deputy chief of staff before she became a judge, and then Lisa Mannion came to replace her, and we took off, and we were having the greatest time. And then suddenly, on May 24th, 2007, Norm died of a heart attack, and we were stunned, and we had to do something. And it was time for me to grow up and to become an elected official. I want to say that today's front office is the strongest that we've ever had, and I want to do a shout out to Nicole Franklin from IT and Jay Zhao running the budget, our HR department with Heidi and Becky, but also Hazel and Selena and Carla and others. Our sentencing review unit being run by Carla Lee, Deputy Chief of Staff. Our communications team, Casey McNerthney, Douglas Wagner, are the best, absolutely the best. And I was pleased to be able to appoint Colleen McIngles to be the Director of Victim Services because we've always needed that voice at our table, and she provides that very well. Shout out to all my chiefs, Kathleen O'Brien, who I had to beg to become family support. I mean, she turned me down and said, no, you don't get to turn me down. You're the chief. She said, well, let me think about it. I said, okay, you get 5 minutes and then you're the chief. Susie Slonica, who replaced Kevin Wright, who replaced, who's here. Thank you, Kevin, for coming. And Sally Bagshaw, thank you for the Bob Dylan shout out on the video. And yes, I will play golf with you because you're not any good either. Jimmy Hung, who was the first division chief in juvie. I thought juvie needed its own focus. And Dan Clark, who has done just a tremendous job under tremendously difficult circumstances following Mark Larson as the chief criminal deputy, and I have just nothing but gratitude in my heart for what you have done for us, Dan. So the leadership of this team has helped us build a modern public law office, one that, whether or not you recognize it, is the envy of many other public prosecutors' offices, and we're held up in high esteem around the country. And no doubt, I mean, all of you, look at you. I want you to look to your left, look to your right. Evidence beyond a reasonable doubt right there. This is a fantastic group of people, and we have so many alums back here too, Maureen Galloway and Wilson and just so many people who've come back who didn't have to, but they came back because this isn't just about me, this is about us, this is about this office, and about what our potential remains and what can be. I want to take a quick moment to shout out to one particular group, because I know that my time as a prosecuting attorney, as the chief of staff, as the elected prosecutor, when I've had the privilege of being with people who've lost so much and to try to be a victim advocate for them, I know what an enriching and what an amazing privilege that is. But I also know how hard it is. And the victim advocates in this office every day work with people who have lost something, whose lives have been turned upside down. Maybe they've lost a loved one, maybe they had a window broken, or somewhere in between. And we have people reaching out, representing this office, and wanting to help people get through the mystery of the justice system and to find some justice. And I have, over my years, these have been some of the most meaningful times when I have been able to sit in space with people who have lost a loved one. And I've met with countless parents who've lost children. I have sat with Holly Washaw's family in the death row chamber at Walla Walla, and with them watched what I hope is the last execution in the state, but it was important for me to be there with them. I met with, in the Ridgeway case, dozens and dozens of victim families to explain what was going to happen in that case. And those are moments, while they were really hard, they'll be the ones that will stay with me. And those of you who do this work know exactly what I mean. They take a toll. And my gratitude goes out to all of you victim advocates and all the people whose job title doesn't say victim advocate, but who do that work anyway and witness that trauma up close. And I know that trauma has to rub off vicariously. It's awfully hard to sort of leave it at work. And it changes who you are and how you see the world. So I applaud the many ways that we continue to try to make life better for people who are involuntarily part of our justice system. Things like the firearm removal unit. That team is so impressive. The civil legal aid that we're providing for domestic violence survivors within the project safety rubric, and the civil protection orders, which we've always had for 35 plus years downstairs and also in the RJC to help anybody. It isn't a mandatory prosecution function, but it is important for public safety. And finally, for the restitution that is we try to get for people and now is part of the diversion program. I'm so proud of all of you and that work that you do. Second question is, well, what do you consider your legacy? Well, I'm glad I thought about this a long time ago, because you can't ask yourself that question 2 weeks before you quit. You have to kind of figure it out and plan on it. And I have two things I want to say about that. First, I'm very proud that we have built some bridges between the courthouse and the community. And the truth is that the communities that are most impacted by crime are also the communities that trust us the least. They trust the police the least. They trust prosecutors and the court system not at all, because, and this isn't an irrational distrust, this is based on history and how they have been treated. And so we needed to approach them with humility and with a willingness to share our power. And I coined the term community justice to describe all of these efforts that we've been at, because To me, the term means that we are willing to share our power and our challenges with those who are willing to work, especially with young people who are heading down the wrong path. And I am convinced that while the community accountability answers look different than I would have created, I would never have thought of sitting in a peacemaking circle for hours with people. But once I did it, I realized, there's a lot of power here. And there's a lot of power in that connection and asking a young person what they want out of this world. And so it is, for me, that's used to be something that was kind of nice to do. Community justice is no longer optional. It's absolutely essential that we continue to have these partnerships with people. And the questions, really, there's two questions when you enter into a partnership. Number one is, will they trust you? Have you done anything to permit the community nonprofit or the leaders to even think about trusting you? And the other is, can you trust them? Can you give up a little bit of your power and allow them to create a community accountability program that might not be the one that you would have created, but understanding that they have powers of persuasion that no prosecutor, judge, or anybody else in this system will ever have. So these programs, they move at the speed of trust. They require time and relationships, but as I look back, I'll be very, very proud that we were involved with groups like Choose 180 and the Community Passageways and Point One North, the Public Defender Association, my friend Lisa Dugard, who helped create the LEAD program 12 years ago, and look where they have gone. The Urban League, the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence, more than a dozen nonprofits right now who King County is paying to receive individuals who we could have charged into court, and instead are sitting with coaches and credible mentors and talking about important, profound things in their life. Those are things I think are essential for public safety in order to give the communities most impacted by crime a voice and a reason to trust us. The other legacy that I am proud of, and I am a proud pioneer of the progressive prosecutor movement. It's a movement, not a moment, because people are getting elected, proudly hanging on to some of the tenets about we need to change the system. Now, the first time I heard that term was in 2016, right after Kim Foxx got elected as state's attorney in Cook County in Chicago, and she had about 8 months before she took over, and so a bunch of us flew out to meet with Kim and talk about the possibilities of change and transparency and how to break into what was then a very hard shell to crack in the second largest prosecutor's office in the country. And I've embraced the term progressive prosecutor because really, what's the opposite of that? A regressive prosecutor? It's like people who want to weaponize the term woke. What's the opposite of woke? I don't know, asleep? We can't be asleep and we can't be regressive. We have to be aware of our history. We have to be aware of where we're going. We have to be aware of how our brand plays out in the communities most impacted by crime, and we have to try to do something about it. So I am on the board of Fair and Just Prosecution. With this group of newly elected prosecutors since 2016. I've been to Montgomery, Alabama, and Selma. I've been to Portugal. I've been to the prison in San Quentin. I've been to the White House. I've been a lot of places with these folks, and they're my friends. And their stories involve leaders who, with the vision and courage to run and to say, I want to be the prosecutor because I want to make a change. And the resistance that they get, they deserve this. They get resistance, and particularly the women of color, and the resistance they get is vile and unrelenting and awful, and yet they stand up and do it. So their continuing stories show also how easily our criminal work can be politicized and weaponized against us. So the stories of courage are in this book that's in the back. I purchased a couple hundred copies of this book when it first came out just last month. And so I hope you'll take one and read. I'm in there somewhere with my dog Yoda. And I hope you'll read about some of my friends that I've met doing this work. And I just know that as hard as it is sometimes here, that it's 10 times harder for people around the country to hang on to this mantle of a progressive prosecutor. And in my chapter is another place where I outline the 5 pillars of criminal justice reform. But that's not for today, because that's a whole nother talk. But we have a long way to go. And grab a copy and please read it, and I'd be happy to even sign it someday between now and the end of the year. Finally, the question is, what are you going to do now? Well, yeah, it's a good question. It's a fair question. And my first answer was, well, nothing. It seemed to be really kind of uninspirational to a lot of people who heard that. And I think they really undervalue the degree of difficulty in doing nothing. I think doing nothing is doing something, and it's hard, but I'll tell you about that later. I will be a better spouse to my amazing wife, Linda. She and I got married 2 weeks after we took the bar exam, and I started my career here, and she's had a tremendous career and is a corporate vice president at Microsoft, and she deserves a stay-at-home supportive spouse, and so she'll get one. So I'll be a better spouse, a better father to James and Katie, a better brother to my sister Karen, a better son-in-law to my father-in-law Bud, and I will try to be the man that my dog Yoda thinks I am already. I'll work on my mind, on my body, on golf, hiking, and music, and friendships, and there will always be things that are worth fighting for, things that get me off the couch. And when I think about justice, we talk about equal justice and social justice and criminal justice, but justice, foundational justice, isn't what happens at the courthouse. Foundational justice is what happens in our neighborhoods. And it has to do with hunger. You know, children go to bed hungry in King County, Washington, and they don't go, when they get up in the morning, they don't have breakfast before they go to eat. And how can that be justice? So it's hunger, it's housing, it's health care, it's education, and in 2023, it's voting. Voting. You know, democracy is endangered. Political violence, delusional conspiracy theories proliferate to threaten what we have built in the United States, which has always been the envy of the world. And now it's threatened, and people need to stand up and say, you can trust the elections, and we have to have a peaceful transfer of power. We have nothing to save but democracy itself. So that'll get me off the couch, too. I want to say that the last 3 years have been the toughest years of my 37. They've probably been the toughest years of our lives, if you talk about it. You think about the pandemic, about the unrest after George Floyd was murdered, about increasing gun violence that has been the uniquely American response to the pandemic, about brutality that we see, about wars between nations in Eastern Europe, and an insurrection right here in our own country. And if you don't have anxiety and depression after the last 3 years, where have you been? You haven't been paying attention. So at the same time, despite that difficulty, the context is important to say that by nearly every metric available, right now is the best time to ever have been alive as a member of the human species, right now. And need I say that right here in the Pacific Northwest is the best place to live. So we got that going for us. So I'm going to take full advantage of the years that I have left, never forgetting the improbable odds against my own conception and birth as a privileged, loved man in Seattle, Washington. And I want to just tell you how important this family is to me. So today we celebrate not a retirement, but a promotion from public servant to private citizen. And my wish for this office under the new administration is that we all work together to lift each other up, to give each other some grace, and to remember what an exceptional place this is, and to always strive to help each other show that the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is a tremendous asset for the county and the people we serve. Continue our standard of excellence, which is a long tradition here, to continue to help the children and the families and marginalized people that we see, to help King County government do great things. I'll be watching from the sidelines with pride and with gratitude after 37 years. Thank you for this, and thanks for letting me stick around so long. And now you all have to go back to work.